Well, good morning, Quirky Birders. It's Lynn here, and welcome to episode 3 of your daily art challenge. So, our picture is coming along really nicely, and it's getting some wonderful colours. We've certainly had some fun mixing our different shades and tones of colours, and yeah, it's looking rather nice at the moment. So what we're going to do today is we're just going to put in a little bit of the burnt sienna on our little row of trees here at the back. So again, I'm just going to be working wet on dry. And we're just going to be just putting in some colour on the trees. Now I want the white of the paper to show through in places. So I'm not going to sort of paint and literally fill in the entire space. What I am going to do is almost just scribble, because that will give me that lovely little bit of texture. And we can actually enhance those with a little bit of glazing once they're dry. So all you need to do is just literally just scribble some colour onto your little trees and just allow areas of it being paler. You can allow it to be darker in places. But just keep it nice and loose. Hold your paintbrush quite a way up the handle. And that way you can just lightly apply the colour. Come up into the sky. You just want to keep those individual trees quite cleanly defined. And then our last one, I'm just going to drop in a little bit of the yellow ochre into the burnt sienna. Just changes that colour ever so slightly. So just carry on, just like I say, just scribbling that colour. Like so. Now, because we've mixed a little bit of the yellow ochre into the burnt sienna, what we then can do is we can just go across them again, but only in places. You don't want it all the way around what you've just painted, but just put in a little extra bit of shading. In exactly the same process, just squiggle that paint onto the paper. a little bit where it's a little bit darker here at the bottom. Just come up this middle one here. Now what you can do in order to add to the effect of these little trees is you can just drop a little bit of water onto that paint, and it just causes that lovely blooming effect which will just add to the texture. So you don't need to apply a lot, but just in a couple of spots. Put a little bit along the bottom here. And again, just a little bit of water. Now I'm actually happy with that. I think that looks quite effective. Just put a little bit more shading along this one in the background, just so it stands a little bit stronger. Now we're rapidly coming up to the point where everybody's painting is going to be slightly different. You're going to see different shapes, different textures, and you're going to be wanting to respond to those shapes and textures all a little bit differently. So those trees now need to dry, and what I can now do is just begin a little bit of work on the glazing process of our little shed. But first of all, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pop in, I've got a little plant pot here, so I'm just going to pop in using a little bit of that burnt sienna. I'm just going to paint my little plant pot, and again just allow that paper to bleed through ever so slightly, just so you've got a little bit of lightness. Okay, so what we now need to do is we need to start adding in some extra colour to our little shed. So in order to do that, I'm just going to mix a lighter sort of grey browny colour, something that's a little bit darker than what we've got down already, so we can just work in the glazing process. And I'm just going to begin by putting in a little bit of colour on along our little fence. It's got quite a jagged edge along the top, so I'll put a little bit of darker colour along the top. And you just need to take your time now. We'll do a proportion of it today, where we'll just make our way around the painting and just adding in some extra little glazing and shaded bits, and then we'll do a little bit more tomorrow just to finish that off. So with the darker colour, what I'm going to do is just follow those pencil lines of those of the wood panels. Now don't worry if you put something down that you feel is a little bit too dark, then just take your brush, dry your brush off, and you can just knock that colour back, absolutely not a problem. So you're just going to put every single little pencil line, just put that lovely sort of tonal colour just over the top. And then what we will do is we'll also come down on these little horizontal lines too. And we'll put some little divided little panels in. Now I've obviously got my paintbrush too close to my little plant pot, so it's just bled a little bit up the side of my building, but I'm not going to panic about that. We can just deal with that in a little while. And then we can put a little bit of the darker colour under the eaves of our little shed, which just creates that lovely little bit of shadowing. And then all we need to do is just put a couple, just some little lines. You don't want anything too much with regards to the shading on your little shed. So we'll just put the odd light little line. Like so. The texture on that little shed is really now beginning to build. It's looking rather nice. And then we'll just do the same just along these little horizontal panels. Lovely. Okay. Now I'm quite happy with that. All I'm now going to do is I'm just going to paint in the window frame that we can see through from the door. And then with this wonderful colour that we've just mixed, we can put in a little bit more colour onto the actual tree trunks. And like I say, just keep it nice and loose. You don't need to be too sort of filling it in as though it's like an illustration. Just put some little dots almost and dashes of that colour. And when it comes to the ink detailing, that will really help to define your picture. Okay. So we shall leave it there for today, and then I will be back to you tomorrow, and we will then be working on the final layer of colouring before we take some time and do the ink details. So I shall see you all tomorrow.